What's going on, everybody? Welcome to the California Working Families Party, Empowering the Electorate, a forum with Representatives Barbara Lee and Katie Porter, both of whom seek to be the nominee for U.S. Senate representing California in Congress. I'm Francesca Fiorentini. I'm a comedian, a podcaster, a pundit, and I'm joined by none other than Nato Green, comedian, union organizer, father. Nato, what's up?
What's up, Francesca? I know that you're in your home studio bunker.
Yes.
I'm here live at the watch party at El Rio, which
Hell
I don't know if
yeah.
you know, this is Spanish for the Rio. Um,
Mm.
Here in the Mission District of San Francisco, El Rio is a legacy LGBTQ bar and club in San Francisco. I am all of the straight people who are here right now and happy to represent the straights at the debate tonight.
Same here, except it's just me and my cat,
Yeah.
who is gay AF. We're also, by the way, not only in El Rio, but there are over 30 watch parties around California. 1,200 RSVPs, so I hope people are trickling in and joining us. Nato and I are gonna do a little pregame. Then Jane Kim of the Working Families Party is going to be actually hosting the forums and discussing the issues and asking questions that we all have of these two candidates. And then Nato and I are going to wrap it up with, of course, some help from the folks in El Rio. Can we hear them if they cheer? Are we excited tonight?
Did you pick that up? Did you hear that? There was
Not at all, but
not at all.
but like
Okay, just imagine throngs of people screaming uh as though it were a Beyonce concert,
indeed,
but
indeed.
a
Look,
Beyonce of nerds.
Nato and I are no strangers to doing stand-up comedy on Zoom during the pandemic. So I mostly just hear laughter anyway, you know? Um,
Yeah. And I'm no stranger to not ever hearing laughter because the audiences don't like me.
right.
So um same.
Same, same. Nato, what are you excited about tonight? What are you looking for?
Uh, the I was reading an article about earlier this week. There was a Senate forum at the California Federation of Labor, and in the article, the union leaders were talking about the Senate race as an embarrassment of riches, which is a weird way to address the problems of like Gilded Age era inequality, but whatever. And So I'm looking forward to I hope that the candidates come out, they throw some elbows,
Yeah.
they get some bars in.
Yeah.
They say something interesting to distinguish them from one another. And I hope that the people here get blackout drunk and make out with somebody before the night is over.
I think we're all hoping that,
Yeah.
truly. No, I mean, well, that's really interesting you say that because a lot of money is being spent in this race, for better or worse. The two candidates we're speaking with tonight are being actually outspent. I don't know why I'm leading with it, but outspent by a candidate who did not respond to Working Families Party to be part of this forum. That is one Adam Schiff. So the entire night we will just be dunking on Adam Schiff, and I hope that everyone joins us.
I mean, let's be honest. Like at the, for the senator from California, the bar is on the floor. Like, how exciting would it be to have a senator who knows that they're a senator? Um,
Yeah, that'd be tight.
so
Who
where
can tell black lawmakers apart? That's a good
Right,
one. Although, look, let's be fair. All
where their
right.
continued tenure in the Senate isn't a form of elder abuse. I think that would be nice.
But let's
Oh,
be
I don't know,
fair.
Francesca, you couldn't hear that, but the audience and the audience here groaned because I said something that was true.
Yeah.
Uh,
We all saw the photos, and we heard the stories. But of course, Senator Feinstein's not the first person who confused two black senators. Let's be real. We're dealing with the entire Republican side, so interchangeable in their minds. No, there's a lot to talk about. We're gonna we're gonna tread lightly. Um, I I'm looking at this and I'm like, I want a fighter. Do you know what I'm saying? I want, I'm a Bernie babe. I'm a Bernie bro. I dabble in some Warren, and I
uh-huh.
want someone like that. I want someone who, when Rashida Tlaib's Al Nakba celebration was shut down by Representative Kevin McCarthy, Senator Bernie Sanders, uh, found a room for them, right? Like actually like said, screw Kevin McCarthy. We're still going to do this commemoration. We're going to do this event. And that to me is just one small example. But I want a fighter like that, especially, I mean, talk about an issue that is not, is sort of the third rail in DC, Palestinian human rights. So one of the many things, but I like that. I want that fighter. And so I am looking to see who can distinguish themselves by being that fighter. You know, Barbara Lee, arguably has been a fighter for 25 years. And we all remember her no vote on authorizing endless war to invade Iraq, Afghanistan, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. That was huge. That in today's terms would probably have gone viral. But Katie Porter crushing it on TikTok. Much more viral.
Dry erase board.
I know. So I feel like Representative Lee needs to
Francesca, by the way, the people here, there are some people here who are boomers who don't know what TikTok is.
Oh yeah.
So they don't participate. So I will.
You guys would crush it. TikTok loves
Francesca, and I will raise you. I would like to know whether Barbara Lee or Katie Porter are going to dislocate their jaw like a python and swallow Josh Hawley whole. That's what I would like to see. I'd like to know which one is literally going to shit down Mitch McConnell's throat on the Senate floor as a filibuster. So I'd like someone to ask that question, please, if that can be arranged.
I love that very hard. Although the problem with that is that Mitch McConnell would totally enjoy it. Oh God, he'd be really into that. Gross.
Not to shame if that's your thing. I just assume that that's not Mitch McConnell's thing, but maybe Francesca's right.
I also, this is not really for you, but these are all transplant candidates. They're not born and raised in California. That's important to know. So I do also want to know, are we Warriors or Lakers fans? Does that matter?
Is that a sports reference?
Yeah, sadly
I'm not familiar.
I think it's the one with the round ball instead of the
round ball,
oval-ish. Anyway,
do we get to interview somebody now?
Let's go interview somebody. You want to introduce our first person we're interviewing?
Why don't you do it?
Okay. Please welcome City Council member of South San Francisco, the youngest City Council member on that South San Francisco, and the first openly LGBTQ plus council member, James Coleman. We're doing the stand-up intros, by the way. Name is last. James
Coleman.
¿Dónde estás?
Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you. Can you hear us?
Yes, I can.
Yeah. How's it going, James Coleman? Are you at a watch party?
I am. I'm hosting one.
Nice.
And describe the scene.
Well, right now we're at a bowling alley. It's a new trendy bowling alley. We're at the bar section, and there's about half a dozen of us right here now.
And do you have the snappy shoes? Do you have your bowling shoes on?
Oh no, I'm not today.
And is there like a bachelorette party that you're contending with, or are you trying to like change the television station away from whatever they're watching to watch this?
Well, we were able to pry away a couple TV screens, but they're also basketball, hockey, baseball. One of every.
Ooh, Senate Forum. Let's do this. James, what are you looking for tonight? Like, how do you think that two progressive candidates can distinguish themselves from one another and earn your vote?
Well, I think it's amazing that we have two truly corporate-free candidates running. And what I really want to hear about, and this is what I hear, knocking doors all throughout South San Francisco, is number one, affordable housing. How are we going to get it built? And number two, childcare. How are we going to get those wait lists down, and how are we going to get children high quality education?
I'm a new mom, so I completely identify with that. I don't think I knew there was pre-K. I just thought there was K, and I should have looked into that before I decided to have a kid. But anyway, there's a lot more money I have to spend. And President Biden did sign a sweeping executive action. It was much more of a strong suggestion to the different agencies to look in to how to cut spending. It is a far cry from what he initially promised, which was universal pre-K. I don't know. What are your thoughts on getting into what you want from a senator from California on this issue?
I want to see how we can get federal money trickling down here to the local level, where we can support our local preschool providers and teachers. I mean, many of these preschool teachers make a lot less than K through 12 teachers.
Yeah.
And they work a couple of years, they realize it's not going to get them a living wage, and then they move to a different profession. And so we need to see this be a profession that teachers see themselves going through long term.
And so, James, my question for you is, whenever I visit South San Francisco, which is almost every week, the thing that everybody says to me is, they say, what is a Democratic senator from California going to do to defend democracy from attacks by the extreme right wing in the Senate? So people can't stop talking about it in South San Francisco. What would you like to see a Democratic senator from California do to defend democracy from attacks from the right wing?
What I really want to see is corporate money out of politics, right? How is the right wing funded, right? The big corporations, big oil companies, big real estate interests. And so once we get that corporate money out, I think our representatives represent the will of the people and not that of big money.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much, James, everybody. James Coleman, give it up wherever you are. Raise your glass. Very excited. Thank you for joining us, obviously, and giving us your thoughts. And maybe we can check in.
Comedy intros and outros. Tip your bar and wait staff.
Tip your bar and wait staff.
Everybody. Buy his album.
We have another interview coming up. We have someone else who is watching this forum with us tonight. Ariella Lara is an Oakland High School student and also a member of the Sunrise Movement, trying to fight for climate justice. Ariella, are you with us to give your take?
Yes, hello.
What's going on, girl? Question for you. Do you think that once a candidate can no longer identify any of the bands playing at Coachella, they shouldn't be running?
Well, that's a good question. I mean, I would say that as long as they're able to connect with their young voters, as long as they're able to ensure us like childcare, as long as they're ensuring us like climate education, I don't think I mind so much. So if they can't identify some bands at a Coachella, I just want them to be able to protect us, to ensure that we have a future, a livable future, and one where they're investing in us.
Absolutely.
And so what will you be looking to hear tonight from the candidates that will let you know which one you're most excited to protest by you locking your head to the desk in their office? And as a father of teenagers, I'm super hip and connected. And so how will you be able to tell which candidate has W Riz?
Well,
My kids think that's cringe when I say that, by the way.
No, Riz. I think Riz is important, but I also think Riz is about trust. I think Riz is
about trust, everybody.
Yeah. I think like when we look at our candidates, I want to be able to trust them. I want them to be able to provide effective solutions, effective action. And I think Riz is a great way to put it. It's like, it's like, I want to favor them. And yeah, it's like about how they're going to handle adversity in their office, how they're going to be able to attack solutions when they're under pressure. And I think Riz in that case could work. Yeah. Like, it's about like how much I trust them in office. But I love the way you put it there.
I mean, I guess I have thoughts on, I have a question about what you think, what you won't settle for when it comes to climate change and climate justice, right? Like we've got President Biden, who is, very excited about rolling out electric vehicle charging stations and rebates and, you know, the doomsday clock is, I don't know, what are we at, Ariella? Like 7 years or something, 6 years? I mean, you might be
Very soon.
through college by that point or through grad school. But so what are you looking for when it comes to bold climate action from, you know, a future senator here?
Yeah, I think that when we think of climate action, we have to make sure that we're focusing on the intersectionality behind it, that we're honing in the idea of just that, yeah, we only have a few years left. And you need to make sure that you're honing in all different sectors, because climate change, climate justice is about ensuring that you're looking into Brown and Latinx communities, that you're investing in our education, that you're investing in our healthcare. I think intersectionality plays a big part in that, because climate change is a pressing issue. It's so daunting for my future. It's so daunting to go into my classroom and fear the floods and fear the fires. It's right side out of our windows. And so action must be taken now, and you need to focus on the intersectionality behind it, the fact that there's a reality on like communities who are most facing the brunt of it. And so I always go back to that point of how like climate change is about climate justice.
Yes. Love it. NATO?
I'm just sitting with the profundity. Climate change is about climate justice. Taking it in. I'm getting it tattooed on my forehead right after this.
Ariella, anything else that you want to ask? Like, if you, like, what else are you looking for? Or is that, I don't know, because I didn't understand Riz, so I kind of like, I blacked out while you were talking about that because it was just so.
Okay, boomer.
Riz is an interesting way to put it, but I want to like end it off with like talking about the Green New Deal and the Green New Deal for schools specifically, because this is a campaign that is really focusing on building better buses and better buildings, honing in and reinvesting on renewable energy in our schools. It's about telling us the truth about the climate crisis. It's about setting a plan for when climate disaster strikes. There's so many demands that the Green New Deal for School has set forth, and I kind of want to end it off on that note because it's so important to me right now and something that I'm working towards, because we're having a camp in August, and I want our next senator of California to be in support of solutions like the Green New Deal for schools and something that was reproposed recently. And so this is something very important to me, and I just want to end it off there. Yeah.
Yay, everybody give it up for Ariella Lara, a high school student from
Oakland. Sunrise Movement.
And give it up for the Sunrise Movement, of which she is a
Gen
member.
Z in general.
And just Gen Z in general. And Riz. I love Riz's work. You know, he's really hot.
Riz is, as my kids tell me, Riz is short for charisma.
Yeah.
So they talk about who has Riz and who doesn't have Riz.
It did sound like swag. Like I felt like it was like.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay. We don't say swag anymore.
We don't. Yeah, we said, yeah, we're from the 90s.
NATO, any final thoughts about what you're looking for? You know, what's the toughest question you think they have tonight to answer?
I think Palestine. So somebody here would like me to say that the toughest question that they're going to have to answer tonight is going to be about Palestine.
Wrong.
Wrong?
The toughest
you don't
question.
Think that's going to be the hardest question?
The toughest question is, can we wait? Can we wait a year?
Discussion groups.
Okay.
By the way.
To me, the toughest question is, can we wait another year for Dianne Feinstein to not do anything?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think the toughest question is like, what is it going to take to stop the right-wing attack on democracy and the entire planet?
Yep.
And how are we going to do it?
Yeah. And how much urgency are you going to be working with when you're in there? And also, how do we off Adam Schiff non-violently?
How do you off non-violently? I mean, yeah, right. So, given minority capture of democratic institutions by the right wing, and like all the non-majoritarian tools in place in terms of the Supreme Court and the filibuster and the Electoral College, and like how do we how to create a democracy in America.
Yeah, and also, how
Um,
do you actively troll Kirsten Sinema? Do you just wear the things she's already worn on the Senate floor?
Yeah.
Like, do you do the mini backpack and the tutu? You know, do you do the sort of like the Big Bird, you know, at the Met Gala look? Because I would
Uh-huh.
just straight up roll it. Like, that's what I would do. And she just,
I think you should get some Kristen Cinema hair, Francesca. You should dye your hair the Kristen Cinema color.
it's coming. Look, I just, you know, I need a very intense midlife crisis. And
That's a horrible thing to say about your child.
oh no, it's happening. I'll get there, guys.
Okay.
Oh
should we
man, let's get this started.
Let's get it started.
Enough from us.
I want to introduce my friend, our host, the director of the California Working Families Party, former supervisor from San Francisco. Ladies and gentlemen, Jen Kim.
Hello. Hi. Welcome everyone to the first public U.S. Senate Candidates Forum in California in 2024. We are really excited to be here, and there is a ton of anticipation to hear directly from our candidates who are running to succeed Dianne Feinstein, who has held the seat since 1992. Right now, we have over 1,100 folks that are tuning in from their homes, from neighborhood restaurants and bars and neighborhood centers. And we have large watch parties in Sacramento, Oakland, Richmond, South San Francisco, Redwood City, San Jose, Gilroy, Merced, Fresno, Bakersfield, Los Angeles, Ontario, Santa Ana, San Diego, and of course, right here in San Francisco. So we're asking everyone to capture the moment and take a photo of your watch party or record a selfie video and then share it on social media and hashtag Porter Lee WFP. Yes, it rhymes. And our staff thought of it. Hashtag Porter Lee WFP. Also, we would love for you to tweet during the forum your favorite lines from the candidates, your thoughts, and even your questions. And we might ask one of your questions tonight. Finally, I also want to thank our incredible house party hosts who have spent the last month gathering folks in their community, in their neighborhoods, to make tonight a success. So who is the Working Families Party? The Working Families Party believes that securing governing power for the 99% is critical to building a prosperous and strong nation. And our mission is to challenge a two-party system that prioritizes corporations and billionaires over everyday Americans. We're creating a political home here in California for individuals who share a belief that a wealthy nation can and should invest in us and the success of everyday Californians. And this commitment includes Medicare for all, a Green New Deal, tuition-free public college, and affordable housing for all. We believe this agenda is absolutely possible if we organize together. And just last year, WFP elected 6 new progressive champions to Congress in incredibly competitive Democratic primaries, including Greg Cesar, Dalia Ramirez, Summer Lee, and Maxwell Frost. And we want to play a major role in California in 2024. So join us. California can and should lead for the nation. This is a state that overwhelmingly voted for Bernie Sanders to be our Democratic nominee in 2020. And it is a state where the future shows that 3 out of every 4 eligible voter under 30 is a person of color. We want a senator who is going to represent and champion working Californians. And joining WFP as a dues-paying member will support our work to recruit and identify candidates up and down the ballot, and then help them when they are elected to win and pass a working families agenda. And you can join us by texting CA Senate at 30403, and it's at the bottom of the screen. So text CA Senate to 30403. All right, and I want to give a big shout out to the 12,000 members strong Writers Guild of America, who, by the way, entertained and comforted us through the pandemic and are now striking for fair pay against billionaire corporations like Netflix, Disney, and Warner Brothers. And this week is Teachers Appreciation Week. So we also want to recognize the 3,000 members of Oakland Education Association who are also on strike, asking for better pay, safer schools for teachers and students, fighting for affordable housing for unhoused families, and more nurses and counselors in our schools. So let's support our teachers. And while we're at it, let's tax extreme wealth and pay all of our educators more. Now, California was the first state to elect 2 women to the US Senate. So we are really excited today to have 2 dynamic women, leaders and public servants and mothers who have said yes to speaking directly to you tonight. I want to welcome Congresswomen Barbara Lee and Katie Porter. So we had a coin toss 2 days ago to decide the order. And first up is the Congresswoman representing Oakland and Northern Alameda. Congresswoman Barbara Lee represents California's 12th district and has since 1998. And she serves on the Budget Committee and the very powerful Appropriations Committee, which oversees all federal government spending. Lee began her activism similar to our Sunrise High School students in high school, organizing with the NAACP to become the first Black cheerleader in her high school and integrating her cheerleading squad. We want to welcome Congresswoman Barbara Lee.
Thank you, Jane. Should I start?
Well, we have an opening question for you.
Oh, okay, great.
Which is, why do you believe you are the best candidate for the Working Families Party? And what is your strategy to victory in the upcoming election?
Well, let me first thank you for inviting me to be with you, and also Congresswoman Katie Porter. Working Families Party is a party whose values reflect the values that I have held all of my life, and my record hopefully speaks for itself. I have experience that's deep and broad as a member of the California legislature, now as a member of Congress. I have always fought for working families, for people who live below the poverty line, and yes, for the middle class. But I think it's important that we recognize that in California, we have 20 million people who are one paycheck away from poverty. In the Senate, you don't hear any senators, you don't see an agenda that really highlights those individuals and those families who really could have, who need a champion to support their efforts and their desire to have the economy work for them. I've always fought for working families and low-income families. I've fought to make sure, and in many ways, oftentimes I've had to take on my own party because I've stood strong and been very courageous when, of course, you know, when I had to fight against the authorization to use military force by myself. It started a series of wars, perpetual wars. I've led on making sure that cannabis reform is part of our Democratic Party agenda because we know the disproportionate impacts on Black and brown people. I've been very involved on our housing issues. I've worked with Senator Sanders when he was in the House. I actually led the House bill for the Housing Trust Fund. Housing is extremely important in California, from making sure that people do not get evicted and do not become unsheltered, all the way to where young people should have an opportunity, if they so desire, to buy a home in California. And so housing is a big issue for me. And I hope you all would look at my record and see that not only have I had the experience and fought for people, working families, but because of that, you can trust me to fight in the Senate for all of the issues. You talk about climate justice, for example. I was in COP27 last year in Egypt. I chaired the committee on appropriations that funds all of our global climate funds. And let me tell you, people were talking about the developed world and how we have have just destroyed developing countries. And we need to be there, just like in our own communities here in America with climate justice. And so I'm really proud of the international work that I've done on climate justice and making sure that the US pays to repair the damage of what we have done abroad. But also here in the United States, I want to be in the Senate so that I can include climate justice and the bill that I've co-sponsored with Congressman Raul Grijalva around climate justice and making sure that climate justice is part of the overall climate policy in the Senate. And so there are many, many issues that I want to take on, but the lens that I want to bring is the lens that is not in the Senate right now. And we need to have more diversity in the Senate, and you need to have somebody who's had the experiences that I've had, which many of you have had, but I have used my life experiences to put together legislation and funding priorities to make life better for everyone.
So thank you for also timing your answers appropriately. We are providing 3 minutes for every question that we ask, and you might hear a timer go off at 30 seconds. So our next question: there is more income and wealth inequality today in our country than ever, surpassing levels that we have not seen since the 1920s, almost 100 years ago. The top 1% now receives 45% of all new income in this country and has witnessed a staggering $21 trillion surge in wealth. Meanwhile, the remaining 99% of Americans find themselves working longer hours and multiple jobs just to make ends meet. California, despite being the home to the most billionaires, also has the highest poverty rate in the nation. Regrettably, Republicans and many Democrats seem to prioritize the interests of billionaires and large corporations over working Americans and our nation's infrastructure. However, this hasn't always been the case. Half a century ago, top tax rates on excessive corporate profits reached as high as 90%, and for individuals as high as 95%. And during this time, America's middle class was larger than the lower and upper classes. What tax policies do you support federally and in California to address extreme wealth inequality and grow our middle class?
Sure. First, let me say the importance of the child tax credit and making that permanent. Because during COVID and when we did extend the child tax credit, we made what happened was 50% of children who were living below the poverty line and living in poverty really had a pathway out of poverty. So the child tax credit is extremely important. Secondly, we've got to have a fair tax system. And I have worked with Senator Sanders, and we're about ready to introduce the Tax Excessive CEO Pay Act, which would tax companies that pay their top executives 50 times more than the median workers. And that is extremely important to begin to get some fairness in the tax system. I've always introduced the Income Equity Act, which would deny corporations tax deductions of excessive compensation. So we have to really tackle the gap between corporate owners and corporate leaders and the average working man or woman in these jobs, because there's no tax fairness. And I support all of the efforts that other members as their co-sponsors in terms of the big oil windfall profits tax, no tax breaks for union busting. That's extremely important. The Billionaire Minimum Income Tax Act, no tax breaks for outsourcing. That's so important. We can't have our jobs continue to be outsourced, which they are. And for the 99% Act, which Jimmy Gomez has introduced. So it's important that we understand that the rich are getting richer and the poor are getting poorer. And we need to have fair distribution of the tax burden. And it should be on major corporations because they are running away with our tax dollars. They're running away with working men and women and working families' tax dollars. And it's a shame and disgrace. Also, the estate tax. We've got some are talking about reducing the state tax. Well, I believe that we must strengthen the estate tax. And we have to have additional tax brackets for extremely wealthy millionaires and billionaires. And we've got to implement multiple tax credits that benefit, mind you, low income and middle class Americans. And I've always fought for the EITC and a lot of the earned income tax credit. We need to make sure that people understand that they are eligible. I've had in my district, no one knew about the EITC until I started organizing forums and bringing, this first time I was happy the IRS was around, bringing the IRS in to help process the EITC, and that took off. And finally, we got organizations, nonprofits to conduct these conferences so that working families would be aware of and be able to benefit from the EITC. And so we've got to have a tax system that's fair, and we've got to make sure that, finally, I'll just say in terms of our democracy, we've got to get money out of politics and overturn Citizens United, because as long as corporations are seen as people, then come on, we have an unfair political system, which just won't work for working families and for ordinary people who really could make a major contribution to changing this country for the better.
Thank you, Congresswoman. So we are now going to start rotating around the state, and we are headed down to San Jose. And I want to introduce our next interviewee, the first Indian American elected to the California legislature and a Working Families Party champion, Assembly Member Ash Kalra. A former public defender, he's the author of numerous criminal justice reform bills, as well as Medicare for All in California. And he will be asking the question, which won in our Twitter poll this week. Assembly Member.
All right, well, Jane, it's great to see you. Thank you for your incredible leadership and the leadership of the Working Families Party. Congresswoman Lee, it's always an honor to have the opportunity to interact with you. And I know you may have, I think you and Congresswoman Porter left me messages, but I was waiting for tonight to have the opportunity to hear from both of you. And I'm happy to respond back, but I wanted to start by asking a really important question, and it's a three-parter because of it. As you know, a strong majority of Californians support guaranteed health care for all Americans by expanding Medicare coverage. The Congressional Budget Office estimates that Medicare for All would not only save at least 40,000 lives annually, but also reduce healthcare spending by up to $650 billion a year. Presently, there are only 12 co-sponsors in the U.S. Senate for this critical initiative. As a member of Congress and a co-sponsor of Medicare for All, I'm eager to learn, first of all, about the actions you've undertaken thus far to advance Medicare for All. And number two, how will you work towards building political consensus and garnering support from your Senate colleagues to ensure that this life-saving and cost-saving reform gains the backing it deserves and enables this vital legislation to progress? And the last part of it is, in your capacity as our senator, what would you do to facilitate the passage of Medicare for All bill specific to California, something that I'm working on very closely with our beloved nurses? So please, Congresswoman, tell us your thoughts.
Well, first of all, let me put this in context, because from day one, I introduced the first single payer bill when I was in the California legislature. I mean, this goes back to the day in the early 90s. I moved forward, and when I was elected to Congress, then it was Senator Hilda Solis picked up the single payer bill that I had introduced. And I have fought for single payer practically all of my life. I actually lived in Great Britain, and I know what a healthcare system is that does not have the profit motive in it. And so we've got to get the profit motive and corporations out of healthcare. Also, when it comes to single payer and Medicare for All, Congressman Conyers, and I think the bill was HR 676 early on in the I think it was 98, 99, when I first came to Congress, introduced that bill. I think I was the second or third co-sponsor on that bill. And it's so important, once again, that Medicare for All be championed in the Senate. And if there are only 12 co-sponsors in the Senate, I think what I would do is organize with you. I'm an organizer. I was a community worker with the Black Panther Party. I was the organizer for Shirley Chisholm's campaign. I've always organized, and I would be with the Working Families Party and organize around the country to make sure that these senators heard your voices and make democracy work, because it's not working now. And so I would join with you to push these senators from their districts and from their states to make sure that they sign up to Medicare for All, because we can't allow profits and corporations to continue to make medical decisions for people. And that is what is taking place. And when we were negotiating the Affordable Care Act, there was some of us with the Progressive Caucus and the Black Caucus, the Tri-Caucus, the API, KPAC, and the Hispanic Caucus, who tried to get President Obama then to put a single payer option in the Affordable Care Act. And we fought like you would not believe. We could not get him to do that because the votes weren't there. So we said, okay, if you can't do single payer as an option, then put in a public option. Well, we had to fight to get a public option because the votes weren't there. So we got a very moderate measure in there about states being able to, if they so desired, could implement a public option or single payer, which was not acceptable. But that was the reality of what happened during those negotiations. But we did get provisions in for health equity and for a lot of other issues that people of color and low-income people, so deserve. And we're still pushing. Now people are getting ready to be thrown off of Medicaid because of what is taking place around the end of the COVID pandemic. And so we have many, many issues to deal with in the healthcare space, but we have to get Medicare for All passed. I fully support, and like I say, I've been doing this in terms of single payer and making sure that corporations don't run the healthcare industry. It's got to be people-powered. Healthcare is a human right, and I've always believed that and will continue to do that. And I would organize with you around the country to make sure these senators signed up and push the envelope and get Medicare for All passed.
Thank you. Thank you, Congresswoman. All right, our next questioner is Michael Tubbs, the youngest mayor elected in the city of Stockton, California, and was featured in the HBO documentary, Stockton on My Mind. He is now the founder of End Poverty in California and is a special advisor to Governor Gavin Newsom. Michael, welcome.
Thanks for having me, Jane. Really appreciate your leadership, not just in the Working Families Party, but throughout the state for the past decade or so. And good to see you, Congressmember. Good to see all folks who care about working families and working people in the great state of California. Congresswoman, my question is about sort of reducing poverty. And we know that the initial Build Back Better legislation was both promising and exciting. It proposed programs such as universal child care, which we heard about earlier today, paid sick leave, and tuition-free community college. And it symbolized a substantial investment in supporting working Americans. Build Back Better also originally proposed to continue the child tax credit, which you mentioned previously, which is a form of guaranteed income, and as you said, cut child poverty nearly in half in 2021. Unfortunately, these key provisions were cut during its journey through the Senate to secure the necessary votes from Senators Manchin and Sinema. So my question to you, Congressmember, as a senator, which specific components of this legislation would you prioritize for reintroduction, active advocate for, and successfully pass? And secondly, will you champion the expansion and the permanence of the child tax credit to ensure its positive impact endures?
Michael, it's hard to prioritize because I wouldn't want to introduce all of them. It's really, for me personally, prioritizing what makes life better for everyone and what makes this economy work for everyone is something that is very difficult to do. I want to see our caregivers paid a living wage with benefits. I want to see our child care system work where no more than 7% of their income, if they had that, to pay for child care services. We didn't get that done because of Senator Manchin and Senator Sinema. And so we have to have a system. Let me tell you, when I raised my two children, they had to go to class with me because I could not afford childcare. Now here we are in 2023, nothing has changed. And so I know that experience from, my life, raising two small kids on public assistance and not being able to afford childcare. They sat through all my classes with me. And so I would prioritize all of this because my agenda is about closing these gaps on inequality, making sure that everyone has a shot at the American dream, and making sure that the 20 million people who are living one paycheck away from poverty in California don't have to worry anymore about that because they're being paid a living wage, not raising the minimum wage, but a living wage, and that they have childcare available, affordable, and if they don't have the money to pay for it, the federal government, look at the defense budget, $800 and some billion. We have the resources if we prioritize our people, putting people before politics and people before corporations. So I take some of that defense spending and fight, like right now, Mark Pocan and I myself are trying to cut it by 100 billion, and we need your help in doing that. But it's very important that we find the resources, because we have the resources to make sure that people have the life that they so deserve. And finally, I'll just say universal income, guaranteed annual income. I'm one who supports that. I mean, some people need time. We need workforce training. We need a just transition to the jobs of the future, to this new economy. And so we need to make sure that people don't have to scrape and don't have to worry about how they're going to feed their family in California, but rather know what you did, for example, in Stockton, that people feel that they have some dignity and an income coming in while they raise their kids and find a good paying job. So it has many, many legs to it, but I wouldn't want to prioritize, because everything is needed for our working families in California. And we should not have 20 million people living one paycheck away from poverty in the golden state of California.
Thank you, Congresswoman. Our next questioner is a Burger King worker in Oakland and one of the key leaders in the Fight for 15 and the statewide Fast Recovery Act, which establishes a higher minimum wage and better working condition for the 500,000 fast food workers across the state of California. I want to welcome Alondra Hernandez.
Hola.
And Alondra will be asking this question in Spanish, and I will translate after.
Ok, buenas tardes. Soy Alondra, trabajadora de Burger King Oakland y soy líder de la lucha por 15 y un sindicato. Bueno, Biden se proclama como el presidente más prosindicato de la historia. Sin embargo, existe una gran brecha entre lo que se dice que hace y lo que realmente se hace. Hay leyes como el PRO Act y el Employer Free Choice Act que aún están pendientes, mientras que los esfuerzos de sindicalización han cobrado impulso sobre todo el país. En particular, 300 ubicaciones de Starbucks se han sindicalizado con éxito. Y en California, 500,000 de trabajadores de comida rápida, como yo, aseguramos establecer estándares mínimos en toda la industria. Y aún así, se están desafiados por corporaciones multimillonarias para el voto en noviembre del 2024. Ahora mi pregunta es, ¿cuáles son sus planes específicos para fortalecer la protección de los trabajadores y garantizar que tengamos una voz en el trabajo, incluyendo nuestros derechos como sindicalizados? ¿Y qué medidas han propuesto para mejorar nuestros derechos de los trabajadores y empoderar a los trabajadores como yo?
Good evening from Oakland. President Biden says that he is the most pro-union president in history. However, there is a notable disparity between the strong proclamations and actual policy implementation. Essential legislation such as the PRO Act and the Employee Free Choice Act remains pending. Meanwhile, unionization efforts continue to gain momentum nationwide. Notably, 300 Starbucks locations have successfully unionized. And in California, 500,000 fast food workers have secured the ability to establish industry-wide minimum standards, which are now unfortunately being challenged by big corporations on the November 2024 ballot. What are your specific plans to fortify worker protections and ensure that employees have a voice in the workplace, including the right to unionize? And what measures have you proposed to enhance worker rights and empower employees?
Sure. Well, first, I fully support the PRO Act, and we have got to move forward to make sure that we strengthen worker protections. That's the first thing. And I serve on the Appropriations Committee, and every year I try to put more funding in the National Labor Relations Board, because that's a big priority for, I know, working men and women labor unions. But also in California, let me just say the Fight for 15, I want to thank all of you for that, because I've been on picket lines in Oakland, in New York, all over the country in the Fight for 15 and fighting for 15. But you know what? We need a living wage. we need to make sure that the $21, $22, $23, the bump in the minimum wage to a living wage passes, and that is the law of the land. Because in California, how in the world are people going to live off of $15 an hour? That is just unacceptable given the cost of living, which of course speaks to the intersection between that and housing. And whenever labor speaks in terms of labor policy, I've always supported labor. Companies like Amazon and Starbucks, I was out early supporting unionization for workers at Amazon and at Starbucks and all of the fast food agencies and restaurants, excuse me. And I think it's important that companies be penalized for union busting tactics. And we should outlaw the right to work laws across the country. And I would work very hard to do that. My past shows I would be persistent in continuing with this fight in the Senate. It's very important that we remove the barriers for organizing and not allow the big bosses to put these barriers in the way. And I saw what happened in Alabama, for example, with Amazon workers and what they did there. And it was just a shame and disgrace how they messed over the workers there. And so I would continue to work, and it's important to work with you, the Working Families Party, as well as other organizations from the outside, because as a member now of the House, of the Senate also, it's important to get out there into the community and join you on picket lines, join you with the push for the minimum wage to a living wage, and any ballot initiative that comes on the ballot that tries to erode what the legislature has done. I'm going to be out there fighting against those measures, because workers deserve to be able to have a decent life in America, in the golden state of California. And with 20 million people living below the poverty line in California, it's unacceptable. And I will do anything and everything to make sure we change that.
Thank you, Congresswoman. The 30 minutes went so quick. We're actually ready for your closing comments to our audience tonight.
It's 30 minutes. Are we at 30 minutes? Well, I just want to first thank you. I've been around the state and met many of Working Families Party organizations and grassroots groups who are doing wonderful work. And I just want to thank you all for everything that you're doing each and every day to really not only making life better for everyone, but really dealing with systemic change and institutional change, lifting people out of poverty, dealing with mass incarceration and police reform, making sure that climate justice is part of your agenda, making sure that the Democratic Party holding them accountable. I want you to know, I was on the platform committee twice.